everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma joining you, and with us we have Her Holiness, the Reverend Tracy. How's it going?
Oh, living the dream, Tim. One nightmare at a time.
What a wonderful, wonderful time we're living in, right? I mean, at least I got a PS4 now. Aubrey ended up buying one, so I've been playing that all week. She ended up seeing my video game side. Because she bought some games. Some of them came right away, but they were the one-player games, and we have some that we've been waiting for all fucking week to come in. That would be the two-player games. So we stopped by the store to grab Mortal Kombat, just a simple two-player game to play. But she saw what happens when I lose in a game. And it was just like, fuck you, bitch. And I had to turn to her like, no, the character's the bitch, not you. So. Yeah, so that was, that's been the highlight of our week here. But we've had a bit of a sad week since we last recorded.
Indeed. It's good to have a distraction, because, it's been really kind of a bummer. Probably no news to anybody, the passing of one notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I feel like I always say her name wrong, by the way.
Well, how do you think it's supposed to sound?
Is it Ginsburg or Ginsburg?
I've always heard it was Ginsburg.
Okay, my hearing. So, yeah. I mean, not to bring it up, but, it's one of those things I've never really asked, and I feel like people, anywho, not to derail too much. But yeah, so that was a big bummer to hear about. A lot of people are really devastated. Some are scared.
Rightfully so, especially with an article that came out, I believe it was in The Atlantic. Some members of the Trump administration were interviewed, and they were discussing their plans of ways to circumvent the election by, contacting like Republican-friendly states and getting special electors that will only vote for Trump. They're hoping that everything with the post office to the pandemic will allow them to kind of cloud the results, even though, absentee mail-in ballots, there are virtually there's no history of abuse on that, because at the end of the day, what is there to gain with that? I mean, you get a felony for that for no real gain.
Yes, and then I heard actually on the drive home, this is the 24th, Thursday, and I listened to NPR, big shocker there. Probably nobody's shocked by that at all. But they were talking about how there is some investigation going on a few ballots that didn't get counted. It was a total of 9, not 90, not 900, 9 ballots, and these were, I think they even said that they were military ballots. It's early, so I don't want to overquote that one since I literally just heard about it.
Right.
So, I mean, because there's some concern that they want to rush this, because the sooner they get somebody in, the sooner they can maybe try to get a judgment on things like mail-in voting, which could be potentially bad for places like Oregon, that's one of the reasons I moved here, actually, was, I've been skeptical of some of the voting stuff for some time, but that's, I could do a whole episode probably on voting and some of the problems with it, and how, like, some people are just openly manipulated.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that could be bad. There's also, there's a lot of people who are also afraid for women's rights right now, because, and I tried to find it, somebody said that somebody at work mentioned that they had seen somebody share a post about, like, all of the stuff that she was involved in, like even things such as that women couldn't get a credit card at one point without having their husband sign for it, and things like that she fought for. And that would have been cool. I did not find it, though, before the show, but she's had her hands in a lot of stuff. But women's rights, there's a big talk about the concern of overturning Roe v. Wade.
Understandably so. To add on to what you were just talking about our accomplishments, I did speak to the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey, and she was able to give me a couple of tidbits I will share about her history. She was
some good positive stuff, yeah?
Yeah. She was one of only 9 women at Harvard Law School in 1956, and she became the first woman to serve on Harvard's Law Review. She founded the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU with a goal to remove artificial barriers and open opportunities for women. She ruled in the majority to make same-sex marriage legal under the 14th Amendment. And there was a case that came to the Supreme Court that she dissented on, but in her dissent, she urged Congress to, she basically made the argument that under the law as it currently stood, she had to rule with the dissenting, but she urged Congress to go ahead and, cover up what she was not able to do. And her work helped with the creation of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which revised discrimination laws to allow prior acts outside of the normal 180-day statute of limitations for pay discrimination to be incorporated into the claim, which greatly helped women. Yeah, she, and also speaking to the other point too, I believe there are cases very soon on the horizon that could easily eat away at Roe v. Wade. I know when I heard the news, I went to Twitter and fuck was trending because everybody's reaction was just fuck. This came at the worst time.
Oh, yeah, because, it goes back to some of the conversation that happened when Scalia passed when he did, and all of the, if it makes you feel better, or if there's an opening in the last year of President Trump's term or whatever, we won't put anybody in, said Mitch McConnell in 2016.
Yeah.
And that actually kind of goes to more my bigger issue around this is, I'd heard somebody explain that their biggest problem with politics right now is it's not really about what seems to be best for the people. It's almost like sports team level. Like, you are going to ride or die support this team no matter what they do. And I'm sorry, I have absolutely zero respect for a man who sat there and told Americans who already weren't okay with them not allowing the current president to appoint somebody to that open seat. He told us, if it makes you feel okay, this exact situation, this one right here, this bullshit they're pulling right now is what he said they wouldn't do. So, that's where I have a total issue right now, because I do try to consider myself as a true independent. I used to actually sit and consider both sides. That has not happened since McCain. That's totally other topic, but now it's just gotten to such a point where I'm kind of annoyed with both of the extremes on it, because no problem solving is going to happen at these extremist levels, and this is where we're at now. But anywho, some of the talk was that they thought it was, some of the whisperings about her is they felt that it was irresponsible for her to not step down. Because when this all started, these weren't meant to be terms that lasted forever. These were supposed to be people already in their golden years of judging. They had seen things. They're, and part of the tenure of it was intended so that they could plan out their retirement. And a lot of that retirement planning was typically to try to retire under your own party's president. So that is why Scalia held on, and that was part of why they fought that so hard. So this is why it frustrates me that they are going to actually try to push and fill her seat, when she was probably trying to wait until the election to hopefully retire under a Democrat. So that's basically my big nutshell of it, of what I understand of the total impact. She did some kick-ass things in her life. People are scared because they're worried about this big tipping point in the Electoral College. Hashtag maybe we should look into, is the Electoral College maybe outdated in how we do it? Does it need to be looked at? Because this was a conversation that started with Scalia that, then an election happened and then nobody talked about it anymore. So Then it happens again. And here we are, just as unprepared, just as fighting about it as we were when it happened in 2016. So this is my big frustration with politics, is people only giving a shit every 4 years is what puts us in these situations.
Yeah, and to your point, the whole hello, Mr. Tracy.
Oh yes, my husband just passed by. The Mr. Reverend.
Okay. We're living in a bizarre time. I've never. Even back in the 90s, Democrats and Republicans found ways to work together, to make compromises. There's no such, I mean, because I remember back in the 2012 presidential election debates, it was during the Republican primary. I watched one of the debates, and somebody brought up compromise, and like almost every single candidate to a T was acting like compromise was the equivalent of telling them to like murder their family pet with a rusty butter knife or something like
God,
that.
yeah.
I at this point, especially with this now, I am quite scared for what November is going to bring us. Hopefully,
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, hopefully, because I have read too that I have read one article stating that even though the media corporations want to make this seem like it's a tighter race than it actually is, that Joe Biden is comfortably ahead, that people shouldn't worry that much. But I remember 2016, they were stating Hillary Clinton was gonna, win with a healthy margin.
All of the professionals said this was going to be a landslide. Like, I am definitely not buying into it with that level of comfort this time.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that show promise here, but there's also a lot of things that don't. There's still a lot of backing for that.
Yeah.
And also, I guess it's extra alarming that he seems to be kind of priming right back to what he was doing. Like, if he would have lost in 2016, they scolded him for it then too, basically priming his devout followers, that it's rigged, that you need to riot, because he basically gave that command before. It implied more than just saying go riot. I don't think he actually straight said it, so please don't put that on the quote of any headline CNN. Sorry, they're hashtag maybe they're guilty too.
No, they definitely are. The guy who heads CNN very much has come out and stated that Trump was good for ratings. And if he feels something is good for ratings, that's bringing money in with advertisers, what is he going to urge his CNN to do? Focus on giving Trump as much free publicity as he got in 2016.
Exactly, because when there's actually a really good documentary out about fake news, and it's kind of talking about how now both sides are pretty much indulging in it, and it's because of the marketing around headline grabbing, because it has to be dramatic to get you to read anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it actually has made my own radar in my head. If I read a headline and it makes me upset, I immediately make sure I read every word of that article. If I want to drink that particular article's Kool-Aid, I am going to drink every sip of it and make sure how much sugar is in there. And then half the time you get in there and Trump said whatever insane ass thing that sounds totally logical to come out of this man's mouth. But then you go and you read the transcript, and that's not actually what was said. And so I'm not saying he's like an innocent, awesome dude. I am saying it does not help when those dramatic claims are being made for the sake of the headline grab, because that's what sells.
Yeah, and there's a great book. I encourage anybody to read it, from Matt Taibbi. He's a columnist for Rolling Stone. I believe he writes for a couple of other places, but it's called Hate Incorporated. I've mentioned it on the show before, but it's kind of detailing the tricks of the trade for the press and how they manipulate the general public. And it's kind of a warning to the general public too, to be aware of this, because the news is just as much of a product that is being sold to you as liquor, as food, as video games.
Yep.
And
you want to know why? When you scroll by and there's all that clickbait in there, guess what, kids? It's the same thing as the person who it's like, oh my God, why do I have to read 3 paragraphs of monologue for a taco recipe? Like, it's the same thing. It is designed to get you to click. And hey, just pro tip, if it's an article that you have to click next every 5 seconds to get to the next point, just abandon that ship. That is not probably a reliable source.
Yeah.
I personally check out the BBC World News, because they actually have a section for US and Canada. And, it's oddly interesting. I encourage, just go and be skeptical on whoever your favorite is. It's okay. It's safe out there. You are totally allowed to feel exactly the same way after you read other sources. People just forget this. You're allowed. You can read stuff and still feel the same,
right,
but feel maybe more secure in how you feel. But, yeah. So it's interesting. Just the times. I every 4 years, it's just a lot of anger and aggression, and then that frustration over people not actually doing anything outside of that.
Yeah, I watched. It reminds me of Professor Aubrey and I watched this rather downbeat and depressing documentary that's on Netflix called Capital in the 21st Century, and kind of a detailed history of, kind of how economics ties in with politics, and I'd have to watch it again and take notes, because I know we briefly discussed talking about documentaries at some point, and I'd want to go more in depth on that when we do. But
it feels like a natural topic kind of coming up for us lately, so maybe we can explore that in more deets. But I'll take the name of it, because I'm always down for a good documentary.
Yep. But all right, before I pull what's left of my hair out, let's move on to Beep Bop Boop.
Oh my goodness, Boop Bob Beep is the quote right now, kind of haunting one of the Mandalorian stars, Gina Carano.
Something like that. She's an MMA fighter, but yeah, she was in Deadpool briefly as one of the villains, and of course, her breakout role has been in The Mandalorian.
Right, and that's kind of where I learned about her, because I was a late adopter of The Mandalorian. It took my husband watching it in the background for a while, and then I eventually went, okay, and then I got drawn in begrudgingly into this world, it feels like. But no, it's actually a really good show, and we have recently decided as a family that we're going to try to do a Mandalorian-themed family costume. Side note. So I think it's funny that, of course, it's my character that I'm supposed to dress up as, that might be controversial to dress up as now, because of the putting of certain words in her Twitter bio in lieu of pronouns. And so, and I am open to being educated about this. I don't follow the stardom world. I mostly try to let them have their personal life. Like, I'm not that level of a fan when it comes to them. But obviously I try to perk up when things like this come up. But are you aware of any other things that this person has done that's been like transphobic or anything like that?
No, and also reading through her Twitter comments and the article that you sent me from New Music Express, it's, from what it sounds like, it's like she was damned if she did and damned if she didn't, because one of her co-stars on The Mandalorian is a cis male, but in his Twitter profile he put him and whatnot as a sign of solidarity, and other fans were telling her she should do it, and some were stating that if she doesn't, then she's transphobic, and there was name calling. And so she did that as a way to, I don't know, maybe kind of bring those people up to the forefront or something like that. Some people had the comment of, putting whatever she wrote, beep, bop, boop, whatever, in her profile, even if it wasn't transphobic like J.K. Rowling has been lately, it's still a bit of an insult, and it shouldn't have been done. And that's a fair point, I guess, but does that mean she has to lose her job?
Right. It's like, am I going to lose my job? And I changed this, by the way, but on my Facebook, I mean, big shocker here, I'm kind of a smart aleck, and sometimes I make jokes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm funny, and not always. I often make jokes, but sometimes they're funny. And for a while there, under the name pronunciation for how to say Tracy, it would lead one into saying the word smartass. Oh. And so when I first heard this and read through this article, it sort of reminded me of like that being more of the intention of just, it wants me to put this thing. But I could see, I guess, but you're making fun of people who come from other places and, don't have like a name that's just as common as yours where you live. And it's like, well, I guess I could see that, but that's not how I meant it. Just throwing it out there. I was just being a smartass because that's how I roll.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to be nasty or mean. And it kind of almost brings up a side topic of this is also very prevalent in tech industry. I worked at one of the tech places, one of the bigger ones in Portland, and it was a very, very big thing to start putting pronouns everywhere. Like every event I went to one day, it was him, her, him, he, she, they, and I am non-binary. I consider myself non-binary, but I personally just have an attitude, and I'm not saying this makes me right above anybody else, okay? Right. But my personal thing is, like, I don't find it offensive to be considered a he or a she, so, like, I don't know, don't throw stank on it, and I'm cool. Like, just don't be mean to me about it, and you can he me, she me, they me. It took me a little while because down in Texas, being referred to as an it or not referring to a specific gender was like particularly insulting. So I've challenged that and been able to move past that. But I didn't really care to announce to people how I felt about my gender because I personally didn't think what it had to do with my job. So I kind of get like that weird pressure feeling, like nobody told me I had to do it. But me not doing it was also a weird elephant in the room. So I totally get that level of it on her side where she felt like she needed to do something. And I even get succumbing to the urge to be funny about it. Because you cannot care and it not come from a place of hate.
Yeah.
And I wish we were more embracing of that. That instead of demonizing everybody's intent, that everybody's an asshole because there's kind of a highlight of, the few ruining the many. A few apples spoils the bunch. We have a lot of highlight on our news towards a lot of hate, and I feel like that's getting projected on more and more people. So, I mean, granted, I will totally, if I learn new information, like, hey, she actually has this underground subreddit for, like, anti-trans shit, like, I will totally eat my words on that, and actually, no, I won't, because I will not claim to know everything about this human.
Yeah.
But at a glance and at what is kind of available right now, I kind of feel like it would be a little unjust to lose a job over this.
When there are far worse things out there, I mean, like J.K. Rowling, for instance, she tweeted out a photo of a T-shirt. I forgot what the caption said, but the shirt itself was being sold by a TERF organization. And just, there are far more worse people out there that do deserve the ridicule, that do deserve the public shame for their actions.
Yes.
That this does, for me, this doesn't, I'm not comfortable with the level of vitriol that she's had to face. Now, I'm not trans, I'm a cis white male, and I'm not going to pretend to speak for that community. So if they say they are, it's upsetting to put in something contrary to what your actual pronouns are, fine, I'll leave that to them. That's up to them to be upset about. But again, difference between Gina Carano and let's bring up Mel Gibson. I mean, arrested.
Oh, yeah, and he's never had his name removed from stuff. Like, that's the thing that I don't honestly know how I feel about it. Is the cancel culture-ness of it, of especially like going back and erasing what people have done, artistically speaking.
Yeah. Because
I have an issue with that. Like, I'm not saying like you should always look for the diamond in the turd of a human, but to throw out everything that somebody has done, I'm not sure. And like, by the way, George Takei, like, talk about that one much. Like, why did that one get such a pass?
What did he do?
Wasn't there like something with George Takei that came out? We could totally.
I'd have to look into that. I haven't heard anything about him.
Let's not talk about something we didn't plan.
You're okay for now, Mr. Sulu.
Yeah, I guess the other one that might be more well known. Came out, said he was gay, and suddenly that made it okay.
Oh, Kevin Spacey.
There we go. Kevin Spacey's a little bit more well-known then. So Kevin Spacey came out, and for some reason, like, it kind of disappeared. Like, because it's like, oh, well, he was ashamed about being gay. I'm like, no. Like, that shouldn't pardon that.
Well, what you didn't bring up there is the fact that the reason he came out was that there were accusations that he was a child molesting rapist. and
Yeah.
and just he was attempting to use that as a way to kind of deflect, deflect anything, which, just fuck him. I mean, and to speak of cancel culture too, more often than not, when people bring up cancel culture, it's not about innocent people getting shunned and shamed for, doing one wrong thing. More often than not, it's being brought up by people who said something stupid and who don't want to suffer the consequences of what they said. Roseanne Barr, for instance, when they brought her show back, went on a Twitter tirade that she blamed on drugs, and then started complaining about cancel culture after that. Like, I lost my show because it boils down.
You lost fans.
Yeah.
Fans can be lost based on shitty shit that you do, and that's where you have to own that.
Really, the only two people I'm aware of that are permanently in the cancel culture bin are O.J. Simpson and Bill Cosby. There's nothing those two can ever do to get back in the public's good graces. Mel Gibson I don't think he's necessarily in the public's good graces as he once was, but he's still making movies. He's still, he's like, he was in a Will Ferrell movie, wasn't he? Like
Probably. I mean, he shows
like
up and he actually even seems to make fun of that. But I mean, I am one of those humans that does believe that if you do have a sobering moment, a wake-up call, that you can, like, become a better human. And I guess that's where I do have kind of a disagreement with cancel culture. And so, yeah, those are the forever canceled.
Yeah.
But I guess what I get concerned about is the whole cancel culture thing is being used more. And it's even being used across political bridge as well. This idea, and here's how I guess a little bit feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of canceling somebody for something they did like years and years and years ago, for example, I have a problem with, because that implies that people don't change at all. Like, it does depend on what it is, by the way. Like, there are monsters out there, don't get me wrong. But as far as, having opinions and the ways that you have felt about some things, it can evolve and change. And maybe I feel that way about it coming from Texas and knowing how much I have grown and changed as a human, and real things I used to very much believe. You know what I mean? Because of where I was raised, you are taught things. And then at a point I went, and started looking at it on my own. But not everybody has those epiphanies.
Yeah.
And some of them happen later. So that's why I kind of have a little bit of a, depending on what it was, or if it was like, was it a spoken thing and an opinion that was like, whoa, I can't believe this person thought that, versus, whoa, I can't believe this person did that. And I get scared when we are now judging people expressing opinions the same as somebody doing something.
Yeah, I mean, because to your point, verbally, people's mindset can be changed. Like, Hulk Hogan is another one. In 2015, they released, Gawker released some tapes that they shouldn't have, but that were recorded around the same time as his horrific sex tape about where he was saying some rather racist stuff. And to me, cancel culture has to be fluid. Because to your point, people can and do change. Like Robert Downey Jr., for instance. In the 90s, he very much was canceled because of his behavior, being in jail all the time. People didn't want to see him, but he worked at it. He made himself better. He made himself healthy. Now he's at top of the world. I mean, and I think, in my heart, I believe people, at the end of the day, most people can accept that people can and do change, and they will welcome that. But we got to be careful about about discussing cancel culture, about acting out on cancel culture, because not everybody's perfect. I mean, because a couple of years back, I started going through. Facebook has a thing to where you can look back on this day your previous messages, what did I write 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and I started noticing that at one point about a decade ago I started doing Facebook messages that were quotes from Family Guy, but I didn't attribute them to Family Guy. And I felt that if somebody came across those and didn't know that they were from Family Guy, they would be like, do I really want to hire this guy for a job? And people... Yeah,
he lifts quotes quotes. Why would I want to hire this writer? Yeah, basically, and not, yeah.
Like quoting a Quagmire thing, like, ask like one quote, it's funny, but it's wrong, but it's, ask a woman about her father, and if she says anything nice about him, you move on to the next one. And,
solid daddy issues jokes.
Yeah. But it's everybody, especially on social media, if it has something that I've even had another one. I remember on Twitter one time, it was before The Force Awakens comes out, there was a story of a kid who had a terminal illness, and then Disney showed him a special screening of the movie before it came out, and sadly he passed away. But I responded to that article on Twitter with, "Aw, I wish I had a terminal illness." And a lot of people tacked on, and it made me realize that I shouldn't have written that, because that type of comment is more conducive to actually hearing me say it, seeing my body language, knowing that I wasn't serious. Having it typed out and having a complete stranger that will never know me read that, that's a different story altogether. So it's.
But doesn't that go back to the assumption of intent on people seems to be that we are encouraged to think that people are awful?
Yeah, we are.
And that's, I guess, why stories like this bug. I don't think this person was trying to be awful. I could even totally see if this person happens to be non-binary and maybe kind of felt the same way I did, where I'm more likely to joke about it because I just don't want that conversation at work. Granted, it really stinks when your work is so visible to so many humans.
Yeah.
And I can understand that there can be repercussions for deciding not to say something too. It kind of stinks because I'm not feeling the hate from it.
There's a difference between what she did and what Louis C.K. did. Louis C.K., his work was detrimental to his business, putting people in. What he did was sick. But with her, she shouldn't have to lose. Maybe it's an educational moment. Maybe like the Trevor Project could, connect with her and find some way to, do something. It sounds like she's willing to do that, because it sounds like she's talked to the coworker that works with trans organizations, and it sounds like she has the best intentions, but she doesn't need to lose her job. She doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm hoping her reaching out and saying, "Hey, like, I totally get, hey, I will do some work. I did not mean to offend anybody," which seems to be how she's trying to respond to this. And I guess I just hope that I see that embraced. I would like to see her not fired. I would also like to not see that somebody digs up that somehow she is totally spearheading some awful hate groups or something. I don't think that's what's going on.
No.
I hope that's not what's going on. And and so if she's genuine and genuinely didn't mean to be awful about it, I hope karma pays her out. And by that I mean not lose her job. But if she's a shit, maybe lose her job. Cool.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to the top 5 favorite segment this week. We are going to be discussing our top 5 favorite TV shows from the year 1976.
Yes.
How easy was it for you to compile your list?
I actually struggled because this, again, it goes into these were much earlier.
Right.
So they didn't get replayed a lot later on. But I did remember enough to at least cobble up a list of 5. So
okay, I'm kind of in a same boat, just because TV back in that era, a lot of new shows came out. So just going, and there's also I forgot the name of the channel, but I've sent you a clip. There are some great YouTube channels out there that will compile TV show theme songs from particular eras, and it was great, looking at 1976. But there's a good chance that a portion of my list is probably on your list as well. But
because let's be real, we probably caught these on Nick at Night and stuff like that.
Of course.
Yeah, so do you go ahead and lead the way? It was your birthday, Tim, so you go ahead and go first.
Okay. Oh, I feel so special. Oh my God, birthday hat and everything. All right, the first one on my list is The Rockford Files. James Garner. plays a detective, Jim Rockford, and each week he just solves crimes. It was made by the same people that did the TV show Maverick. Maverick was the show that essentially made James Garner a star back in the day, but they wanted a more modern take on that because westerns in the 70s were kind of on that downward slide, and so they came up with this down on his luck, a private eye lives in a trailer with his dad. Each episode starts with a fancy new fandangled machine that was brand new in the 70s called an answering machine. And each episode would be like bill collectors or something like that. And then you have the awesome Mike Post theme song. I mean, probably one of my favorite theme songs there, but just, Jim Garner, he kicks ass in so many ways, and I don't have a specific episode to refer people to enjoy, but just I'm always a good sucker for a good private eye ass kicking type story, so I had to put that on my list. So what's first on your list?
So first on my list, and this goes, I called it because it was Nick at Night, so this was, I remember when we worked on the farm, we would come in and we would watch like the late night, because Nick at Night eventually became its own channel, but for a little while there it just ran shows. It was Nickelodeon, just the at night segments. Actually, Mary Tyler Moore, I remember watching a lot of Mary Tyler Moore. And then one of the weird dumb farm stories we have is that my biggest memory around it was we had a pig named Wilbur that wound up living inside the house with us, because that's the kind of shit you deal with when you're a farm kid. And but he was a runt, but that's the long and short of that. But he loved Mary Tyler Moore, to the tune of, he had a little pet taxi or whatever in another room. And there was one time, because we'd let him out to watch TV with us, and he could hear the Mary Tyler Moore theme song starting, and he hadn't been let out. And we got scared because it sounded like something was seriously wrong, like he was being skinned alive. And we go back there and we let him out, and he just trots out and sits down. And that's the first time we realized that this pig actually watches this show and likes Mary Tyler Moore, and would take at the commercials, would lose interest and go get a drink of water and shit. It was so funny to put that together. As a family, that this pig liked the show more than we did.
Believe it or not, Mary Tyler Moore is on my list as well. For the fact alone, this was James L. Brooks' first big show, and James L. Brooks, he for almost close to 50 years now has a major impact on comedy, because he went on to produce stuff like Taxi, produced the Tracy Ullman Show, he produced this little show you may have heard of called The Simpsons, directed the movie Broadcast News, As Good as It Gets, and then of course the actors on the show. Ted Knight is one of my favorite actors. Just him as Ted Baxter, the newsman, how he could deliver some of the dumb things that character had to say, and yet you knew he was projecting it as if he felt it was the smartest thing in the world that he was saying. Just everything. And Betty White, what was her? Sue Ann Nivens, I think her name was. Cloris Leachman, can't forget her. Phyllis. There were Valerie Harper, Rhoda. So many great characters.
Yes,
in that show.
I recall reading about Betty White, because that was also, her character was a little bit of a floozy on Mary Tyler Moore, and that was one of the reasons she wanted to trade in Golden Girls with Rue, was because she felt she had already done that.
Yeah.
I do remember a little bit about Mary Tyler Moore. And how long did we probably end up watching it? The span of it, because it played on that Nick at Night type feel for a while. So I imagine a lot of people had it in the background at the very least of their childhood.
It definitely caught up with a lot of people. If you're going to check out any episode, there's an episode, I forgot the specific name of it, but there at the news channel, there was a clown that did a TV show that ended up dying. And everybody was making jokes about the clown, and Mary throughout the episode was telling people to not make jokes, don't make jokes, this is a sad, somber occasion. Then they get to the funeral, the person doing the eulogy says something, and then she cannot help but burst out laughing. And apparently that's one of the longest sustained recorded laughs in television history. So, classic show. Since we matched there, we'll go ahead with your next choice.
All right. Well, then I will go ahead and go along then with MASH.
Another choice?
Another one. Again, it's one that played for a long time. And then, funny enough, I don't recall my Vietnam veteran dad watching this, but I recall my mother watching it a lot. And I do recall having to have a sit-down conversation about, who was it that cross-dressed?
Klinger.
I was going to say Klinger, but I feel like I mix up names a lot because I haven't watched the show recently. I just recall it really being in the background a lot. And then, like, there's this dude and he cross-dresses, and why is he acting that way? And then mostly I was like, just don't think about that too much. Go play with your dolls in the corner. But yeah, like, it was also very impactful. They covered a lot of serious stuff. And I didn't get a lot of wartime explained to me. It wasn't that my dad like hid it necessarily. It just didn't really come up. So it was the most that I got exposed to any of that stuff. And when there were times when characters died, and very somber moments, but also very silly moments too, and kind of that human spirit that they had kind of in the background of all of it was, I think that's something that stuck with me as a kid, that even though they covered a lot of heavy topics, a lot of sadness, and a lot of shit and suffering going on, there was still like an awesome human tribal element that you got to see play out in these humans, as much as even like some of the hate, right? Like, who was the annoying chick?
Hot Lips Houlihan.
Yeah. Like, wasn't she super fucking, like, anal? Like, they really played her
at first. At first, when Frank Burns was still on the show, she was I think like one of her first lines in the pilot episode was, "They're ruining this war." Because the other doctors were not following the rules. But for me, MASH has to be on the Mount Rushmore of TV shows. I mean, this has to be one of the best representations of what TV can do. I've seen the movie. I've even read the original books that the whole MASH franchise was based on. And speaking of Klinger, as a kid, I had a Klinger action figure. They sold MASH action figures, and I had a Klinger action figure as a kid. He wasn't in a dress or anything. It was a regular army uniform, but I had a Klinger action figure.
Wow. Yeah. See, I don't even know if they would. I mean, do you think they would have even sold it with a dress? Like, did they ever do that?
Oh, God. It's 70s and 80s? Of course not. I mean, I
know that wouldn't have sold in Texas. Like, even if it did exist, they wouldn't have put that on the shelves down where I lived anyway. Yeah. But, because it wasn't like you had Amazon back then, no. Where you could just get whatever the fuck you wanted. But I also remember, like, later learning that theme song, Suicide is Painless. If you were ever curious the name of that one, and if you want some good cheer you up lyrics, folks, just go and listen to that song with the words. It'll sure put you in a happy, skippy mood.
Funny enough, the person who wrote that was Robert Altman's son. Robert Altman was the director on the movie MASH, and apparently his son made more on MASH than he ever did because of that song.
Wow.
So, funny enough there. And one other tidbit, too, it's interesting that you brought up your father's experience, because the guy who essentially created everything with the book MASH, Richard Hooker, was a hardcore Republican. He hated everything about MASH because that was not his intention. I mean, essentially his idea of MASH was just guys partying in war, essentially. It wasn't about how bad war was. It was about how silly these doctors can get, and didn't get the point that, this could be used to show how bad war really was. So he was not a fan. So that I always thought that was an interesting tidbit. But MASH has been on perpetual reruns. I believe it's on Hulu right now. I mean, go watch it. I mean, the last episode always gets me crying when the helicopter lifts up and then goodbye is written on the ground. Yeah. All right.
It was a good one. Iconic, even. Like, I might have to actually watch that one. But since we matched twice, why don't you go ahead? Because like I said, I suspect we're going to match a few more times.
Okay. This show was on the air in 1976, and this particular show was on the air the day I was born. The special guest host that day was Lily Tomlin. Saturday Night Live. Was that on your list too?
I didn't make that one because this is going to shock some people. I actually have not seen a lot of SNL. I have seen some more recently, but I am not a traditional go back far fan. But I do love it, so I will totally let you gush on SNL as long as you want. Like, they've had great. I mean, I can't say really much negative about it, and it's been going on. Has it been solid running this whole time? Okay, because I couldn't remember if it took a break. Did it take a break?
No, 1975 on. When the show first started, in fact, in 1976, it wasn't called Saturday Night Live. It was NBC Saturday Night, because ABC had a show called Saturday Night Live with Howard Cosell that I guess Billy Crystal was on and a couple of other folks, but it wasn't until the Howard Cosell show was canceled that came on. But people have talked about that show for years and years and years, of course, and it's created a lot of iconic stuff. Like in the original cast, my favorite is going to be the Blues Brothers, bar none. The later eras, like I think one of the best. Up until the true Hollywood stories, where Charlie Murphy talks about meeting Rick James on the Chappelle Show, I think the greatest bit of sketch comedy that I've ever seen came from Saturday Night Live, and that was the Eddie Murphy bit "White Like Me." Have you ever seen that?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's fucking brilliant. It's He gets the makeup artist from Saturday Night Live to paint him white because he wanted to experience what life was like as a white man. So he went out as a white man and went to a bank. They showed him interviewing with a black bank teller first, because he showed up with no identification or something, but wanted a loan. And the guy was like, "I can't possibly give you a loan." And then the head of the bank, a white guy, excuses the black guy to go off and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. How much money did you need? Did you need a little more?" And he just pulls like a sack of money out and starts giving him money. Then oh
my god, I think I actually have seen this now that you're playing it out for me, because this concept feels really familiar.
Yeah, and then there was another scene on a bus, like where there's like one black guy on a bus and a bunch of white people. The one black guy gets off, and then all of a sudden everybody starts getting served drinks, and it's funny. And then the whole punchline is that I can't solve anything, but I got a lot of makeup and I got a lot of friends, so we're gonna see what we can get out of it.
Yeah.
And then from the era I grew up in, I don't know why this stuck with me, but my favorite sketch was Massive Head Wound Harry. It only happened once, but it was Dana Carvey. It was the episode that Linda Hamilton guest starred on. He played an unwanted guest, Massive Head Wound Harry. He had a little thing attached to his head, and like he just a massive head wound. There was like a scene where he's like lying down, and he's like, I'm so lightheaded, and there's like blood everywhere. But then they had a dog on set, and the dog started licking the prosthetic and then trying to bite it off, and everybody couldn't stop laughing. But Saturday Night Live is a classic up until Will Ferrell, because fuck Will Ferrell.
Up until Will Ferrell, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's really, once he joined the cast, I was done. I have not watched that show in well over 20 years.
Oh, you're missing out on some solid Kate McKinnon. I might have to try to cherry pick some for you. Just because she's worth it in some of hers, where she's like broken the cast around her, but she is still whatever character she is. Like, she's still not Kate McKinnon. And everyone is reacting to her, and it's beautiful. But so I might have to try to bring you to some of the more recent ones.
Good luck with that. No, but it made me. I mean, what that show made me realize more than anything is that you can't. It's not a show that you can go back and just like watch a full episode. You really have to watch it for the clips, and the best eras are the ones that had multiple good sketches on like one individual show, and not just like one good sketch and then a bunch of shitty ones after that. So and humor changes, so we'll see. But anyway, what's the next one on your list?
So for me, the next one was another one I recall playing a lot in the background, and I also kind of love the fun trivia that it is the originator of Jumping the Shark, Happy Days.
Oh God.
I also really personally love that I guess the actor that played the Fonz was like a loser growing up. So you want to talk about a major suck it high school reunion? Like, go be the Fonz. Like, hey. I was the fucking Fonz. But I recall that show being kind of, one of the first ones that, they were at least in school. There weren't really a lot of shows about like kids and how they did stuff. So this was kind of the closest to that, especially repeats,
right.
That I more were paying attention to by the time I was in middle school, etc. But yeah, so I liked it for that.
Well, the one trivia bit for the Fonz is that Henry Winkler was not the only one considered for that role. It came down to him and Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees. And ultimately, Henry Winkler obviously got the role, and they're still friends today, and they talk about it. But that show, I don't like that show, but I can respect everything that it brought us. I mean, essentially, it gave Ron Howard his first big adult type of stage to be to act on. It gave us Robin Williams. You know, I mean, Mork and Mindy it was a spin-off of Happy Days, oddly enough.
Yes. That was one that I actually tried to seek out, but it wasn't around yet. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a few things that actually just barely weren't around because, we go back to these were like reruns that I kind of vaguely remember seeing at some point in middle school, maybe.
Yep.
But I do actually remember watching the episode where Fonzie jumped the shark. So did you know that, the trivia with jumping?
Oh yeah, I remember that episode clearly. It was
Yeah, I remember watching it and just going, the fuck did he just do? Like, obviously I didn't say that out loud because maybe I was like 7 or whatever by the time I saw that episode.
Would have been funny if you did.
It would have been great. I would have been grounded and maybe, like, I don't know, back then probably not able to speak anymore afterwards. But no, my parents weren't that bad about cussing. But yeah, I just remember seeing the whole jump the shark thing, and then hearing about the jump the shark term later and being like, oh my god, I remember watching that.
All right, I will get to the last one on my list now, and it recently had its own channel made on the Pluto TV app, which I recommend to anybody. It's great quality content for free. You still have to watch commercials, but it's free. Three's Company. Three's
Company? Oh, hold on. That didn't start until March of 77.
No, that was on a 76.
Was it? Because that was one that almost wound up on my list. Because if so, I'm totally going to join you on this one. But we can go into it anyway. I had tried to be careful because with looking at the ranges, I was accidentally finding stuff that wasn't in the right year.
Right.
But as previously stated, I'm open to being wrong. And I'm just killing time while you look this up.
I know what I did. Dang it. It did start in 77. Okay. What I was...
But let's talk about it anyway. Because, hey, let's be real. We watched all these as repeats, and we make the rules here on Friends Talking Nerdy. So go ahead and talk about Three's Company.
Well, actually, remember my age. I'm old enough to remember that show being on the air. And we watched it. Because I remember it watching the last season and when it transitioned into the spin-off Three's a Crowd. Three's Company, like a lot of shows from the 70s, like All in a Family, was based on a British show. I believe it was called Man of the House. But basic premise is that two women are in an apartment. A guy moves in, but he has to pretend he's gay in order to be able to stay there because the landlord doesn't want it. And hijinks ensue. In a lot of ways, it was a very simple show. It told jokes in the same way that jokes are being told in the 50s. It's just they were talking about modern stuff at that time. The reason I bring that up is because I know Lucille Ball was a huge fan of Three's Company. And in fact, when in later seasons when they had like clip shows, people should be so happy today we don't have to have clip shows anymore. But Lucille Ball actually hosted a couple of clip shows for Three's Company. Which, says a lot about what she thought about that show. But, I mean, John Ritter, comedic genius. Don Knotts.
Yes.
Don Knotts is Mr. Furley. I mean, just his face at the door every time he heard, somebody on the other side, and just what a great show.
Yes, I do remember enjoying the young John Ritter a lot. It was a show that my mom was into, so it was on a lot for that reason. Mm-hmm. And I do remember it being one of those topics, right? Because they kind of implied that he was gay, but they didn't super go into it too much. They touched on that subject lightly.
Well, Mr. Roper would go Tinkerbell and then do the little hand gesture. But you got to think about it, too. Even then, it the point of that joke to me was never against, let's make fun of gay people. It was, let's make fun of Mr. Roper for having these antiquated views. And that was pretty...
Exactly.
That was pretty revolutionary in the 70s, if you think about it.
Well, and I remember watching it in the 80s and 90s in Texas, really, because we'll give me to the age of 5 before I started really acknowledging what was on TV. So let's go in the 90s. In the 90s in Texas watching this. Mm-hmm. I remember there was a joke I didn't get, but they seemed to be pulling something over on that old funny man, and I dug that. And but I didn't really get that it was that he was gay. Right. It was, well, somehow he's allowed to live with these ladies, but, so not all the wires connected. But I did remember thinking, they're up to something, and they're pulling something over on this old man, and I don't understand why it's funny, but it is.
It is. Do you have another one on your list?
I do. I've got one last one, since I'm just going to decide that we shared Three's Company, because I wanted that one to be on this list, and it came up in my Google searching trying to find something in 76. But and this one actually started. It debuted in 76, and I know I watched this a lot. It was a lot of when the TV first became a babysitter for me, The Muppet Show.
Great show.
God, can't say enough about that one. Do we have to talk too much about The Muppet Show? I mean, the guests that they had, the lessons they taught, the funniness, but the dynamics between the characters and all kind of different, I love The Muppet Show.
Yeah, it actually spun off because what a lot of people don't realize is that it spun off from Saturday Night Live, technically, because the Muppets were involved with the first season of Saturday Night Live. They just were not popular because the Muppets type of humor and Saturday Night Live's type of humor did not mesh well. But the beauty of The Muppet Show for me, I remember as a kid in kindergarten, they would have it on repeats every morning. And so before I go to school, my mother and I would watch The Muppet Show. It's really, in a lot of ways, a great primer for kids for comedy. Because it's something that both the kids and parents can watch, and Jim Henson has a wonderful way of being wholesome while throwing you curveballs. Like the Muppet,
yes.
Like the Muppet movie. There was a constant running gag of the characters commenting on Hare Krishna at one point. I remember Gonzo when they first saw Miss Piggy, he was like, "What a pig!" I can't say enough about that show.
That one taught you context, though, right? Because if you just heard "what a pig," it'd be like, "Oh my God, what did you just say?" But he actually meant it as a compliment. And I remember having a Gonzo, he was a beanie body thing with this hard freaking plastic nose that doubled as a weapon if my brother and I were in bad enough as a fight. In the franchise, from on TV to later movies to tours to all sorts of stuff that they've done with that show. And I think they still have projects with that show.
It's
where they still do things.
Yeah, there is a show. I haven't seen it, but it's on Disney Plus called Muppets Now, I believe. I haven't seen it, but the reviews I've read from people I trust, the quality's not there. I am upset that the original Muppet Show is not on Disney Plus, just simply because Bob Iger does not want it on there. Why? And
why does Disney do it?
Who knows?
You know what I mean? I guess it's your art, if that's your thing about it. But that's why I also don't give Disney money. So that's just where I vote with my dollars on it. But that's one, I don't know. I would struggle if I could find it somewhere on a good deal because, with kids in your life, that's the stuff that you show them. Is the thing is that you kind of remember pulling the good stuff from when you were a child.
Exactly.
That's part of the joys of having kids.
Yep. All right. Time for our album review of the week. You brought us an interesting album. Tell folks what it is.
All right. Well, the name of the album is Has Been by one William Shatner, who's actually come up, I think, every time I've been on the show. Technically, I know I've just kind of returned on the reg, but William Shatner came up in the first show I was in, because we were talking about Esperanto, and he is just the ultra nerd because this man just does whatever he wants. And I think this album further proves that. And also that half the time when my brother recommends an album to me, because this was actually a brother recommendation that I've never gotten to, and decided, you know what, 2 birds, 1 stone, album recommendation for the show, and I will finally have listened to this. But this is one that I don't think is my favorite. But I'm excited to go through it. So overall, I think I've got a new term called Shatnering a song, which is basically in lieu of singing, you just talk with a cadence of sarcasm as if you are attending a poetry jam on an ironic level. Because that's kind of what I felt about it overall, but we can get into that individually with each song. But how did it overall hit you?
This is not going to be one that's going to be on repeat listening for me, but it wasn't as bad of an experience as I thought it would be. Because I remember, what was his first album in '68, The Transformed Man or something like that, or the original, and it just, it's a curiosity, let's put it that way. And there are a couple of decent tracks on here that we'll discuss as we go on, but it's not exactly one. It's not going to rival anybody's be top on anybody's list of greatest albums ever made, because it's not.
Yes, I feel if they were to do a music video for this entire album, it would just be William Shatner sitting at a lone coffee table, round coffee table style, with a light on just him.
Yeah.
But still people in the background doing stuff.
Yeah, because that is what he was doing. I mean, it felt like to me he wasn't singing as much as he was doing a dramatic reading of the lyrics, trying to become a character. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But let's go through it.
Let's dive in, right?
Yep. The first track, Common People. What were your thoughts?
So overall, I felt like I've got the notes. This is where I came up immediately with, Shatnering a song. This is where that note came from, was, so we're going to Rocket Man over a variety of musical tunes. Got it. And I hate to say that that's kind of overall how I felt. But the choir randomly popping into this song really threw me off. And I don't feel like the guests ever really made sense. None of the styles seemed to match between him, the choir, and the guests.
It did feel off. I mean, my notes with his dramatic reading, it can seem a little forced at times. The rhyming makes his conversational tone seem forced. The singer, Joe Jackson, was pretty decent. The guitar work was pretty solid. And I think Shatner did get into the flow of the song by the end. I did not realize it was a cover song. Apparently a band named Pulp came out with this song first. But also I did kind of get the idea. I understood why he picked it, because he's been very open about fans that ultimately step over the line. The fans that will show up with 20 different things to sign, or if he's at dinner with his family, oh, come on, it's just one autograph type of deal. So I can get why he picked it. Ultimately it's not bad. I just said that it took about half the song to get to the decent part.
It goes back to very wordy, but it doesn't have the same cadence that I appreciate of hip hop wordiness. It just kind of has the poetry jam wordiness instead, which that has its place. I guess I had hoped for something not, like I said, Rocket Man. When he did Rocket Man. So I guess that's what we have to say about that. It's definitely, the content was good. I would want to sit and read the lyrics to all of these songs just to take in what he's saying.
Right.
So I think I would have almost rather liked just reading the lyrics than trying to enjoy it as an album.
Right. All right, the next song, It Hasn't Happened Yet. What'd you think?
So this one, I put very easily excuse me, let me try that sentence over again. Very easy listening. It was very music-y. I could feel it being in an elevator. And this was the one where I kind of had it in my head where it's I feel like he's at a poetry jam, and this is just the inner monologue while he's not listening to the other poetry jammers.
Yeah. For me, the music kind of threw me off because the music gave the vibe of like 90s, like late night 900 number commercials. Like to call the sexiest ladies, call 1-900. And
Yeah, stuff that turned into elevator music later. Like they just repurposed it, I think, but it felt like the same shit.
Yeah, it just felt wrong, but it wasn't bad, if that made sense. His vocal delivery was quite natural, and I get again why he picked this song because of something you mentioned, the fact that he does seem to do a lot. I mean, apart from acting, he's got the music work, he's got the books he's written, he hosted a game show for a while. He's a businessman actor, and there's nothing wrong with being a businessman actor, and that's it doesn't mean you don't have pride in your work, but you want to take advantage of everything that comes your way. So that's why I think he kind of picked this one, but this is not one that would ever be on a repeat for me or anything like that.
Samesies.
All right, the next one. You'll Have Time.
So I loved the nihilistic nature of this song. And it's like, You'll Have Time. William Shatner featuring the You're Gonna Die gospel backup singers. Like, they cracked me up. Like, every time those gospel, the choir singer, chimed in was awesome. I did have a note that at the beginning is like, oh, he almost started to try to sing here. But then he went right back into, like I said, that sarcastic cadence.
Right.
But the listing the deaths at the end, this was probably my favorite song just because it was funny enough to really get my attention over his delivery. And I think the choir really helped, but I just the nihilistic gospel singers, I love them. You're gonna die.
The notes I had, I did love the Scott Joplin-esque type of opening, and I felt Shatner was trying to put himself back in the shoes. Do you remember that old SNL sketch where he was telling the fans to get a life? I can put it up on the Friends Talking Nerdy page and whatnot, but
yeah.
He hosted SNL at one point in the 80s, and it was a very famous sketch where he told people to get a life, and it was just a silly show I did, but then the host of the Star Trek convention was like, he's playing the evil Captain Kirk, yay. But I felt he was trying to capture that. While the choir was a nice touch, I felt the joke got old rather fast. It was like a laugh, but then it just kept going and going. It's just like, okay, enough, finish already.
Yep, it's not one that would end up on a repeat list of my funny songs. I did appreciate it on the album though, because it managed to stand out lyrically because it sounded different enough to get my attention.
Right.
To sound different than the delivery of all of the other songs.
All right, let's go to the next one then. That's Me Trying. What did you think?
I put in quotes, daddy issues song. And I liked the chorus, musically and vocally, how it sounded. But that's pretty much all I had put on it. Amy Mann, she sounded familiar, but I can't think of anything I would know her from.
She's married, I believe, to Paul Thomas Anderson and did the soundtrack to, I think, Magnolia. So she's an artist that other artists have heard that hasn't necessarily reached mass appeal or anything like that. But she's a good caliber musician. Let's put it that way. So the notes I had, nice piano opening. I dug that. The background vocals with Amy Mann were good. Shatner's delivery in this song was natural. It didn't seem like he was reading lyrics. And it sounded almost like a voiceover in a noir movie, I was sitting in the bar one day, and I like that aspect of it. And I also like the aspect too, it did kind of touch on some of the aspects of what it can be like when dating when you're older. That's not bad to talk about, and sometimes it doesn't go your way. You just find ways to keep moving on, because that's what you got to do. You got to keep trying.
Yeah.
Our next track, What Have You Done? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought, like, I just wanted to make poetry jam jokes the entire time, apparently, at work, because I'm even annoyed with past Tracy here, like, but it was just, I kept waiting for the music to start. Like, I felt like it was an intro, so it was almost the reverse of what happened on the last album, where I'm like, wow, this is a long intro with, music and no words, whereas this one, it just flipped that script on me, where it was all words and no music. I'm like, oh, cool, so this one is literally William Shatner talking. Got it.
Yeah. You don't know the history of the song, though.
I don't.
He wrote this about his wife dying in a pool in the late 90s. This actually happened to him, and this was pretty sobering to listen to. It was very knowing that story, it was very emotional to listen to, because like the 911 calls were made public, and anybody, you catch your spouse drowned in a pool, you're going to be freaking out. He was freaking out, and it was great to see him use art as a way to kind of get through that grief, and I think that's what this song did. It's not, again, this is not something you're going to bring up at parties and listen to or anything like that, but there's a lot of raw emotion here in his delivery if you know that history. So this one, I again, I'm not going to listen to it again, but for what it was based on his history, very powerful.
Yes, and if you are a Shatner fan, I would just say, it goes without saying, like, it's worth listening to. Definitely. I would give it a listen, like, maybe once in a while, or if there was stories like, oh my god, I really love William Shatner, but I've never listened to this. Like, I would listen to it again. But yeah, the repeat value, I'm not going to jam out to it at work. And I actually didn't recall the full story. I remembered his wife had died. Mm-hmm. And this is, like I said, I kind of wanted to go and read the lyrics, just go back through and read through them like a book. I did not get to do that before I got to do the recording with you today. But yeah, it's interesting to hear, because I feel he got raw too also. He did that a little bit with, what was That's Me Trying? So I kind of felt some of that rawness again revisited without the distraction of any music. So It was interesting to hear the rawness with zero other distraction around it. And now knowing the story to that, it really makes sense that he didn't want to distract at all from those words he's trying to speak.
Yep. All right. Let's go on to the next song. Together. What were your thoughts?
I really liked the guitar at the beginning. I have notes that I liked the very light kind of pickin' sound to it, and that I think if you like musically and instrumentally, this was probably my favorite song. So just that alone, not words at all. It felt a little bit more upbeat, I guess, than the things around it.
Yeah. The notes I had, a churchy vibe to open things. The keyboard kind of gave a Pink Floyd type of vibe to me. The guitar work was solid. I didn't care for the drums because it felt like an overactive drum machine going nuts. And it was just much more active. The drums were much more active than what the song really asked for. Didn't care for Shatner's delivery. It just was all over the place. What I did find out is there was a band that did this song with him, Lemon Jelly. They're a UK-based band. When I first heard this song, it sounded really familiar, and I did some digging. They did some work on one of my favorite TV shows. Do you recall the British TV show Spaced with Simon Pegg?
Oh, man. I have not seen that, even though I do love Simon Pegg. So I might have to try to find a way to check that out.
It's on Hulu. I highly recommend it. It's 2 seasons long, 6 episodes for each season. But it's one of my favorite TV. To me, this goes on my Mount Rushmore of greatest TV shows ever. The last episode of that show had a song called, at the very last scene of the very last show, called "A Staunton Lick," which was made by Lemon Jelly. So it was great to kind of have that little connection there. So while I wasn't a huge fan of the song, it was great, hearing Lemon Jelly again do something different.
Yeah.
All right, the next one, "Familiar Love."
I put that it had a very seductive, jazzy vibe. but like it kind of felt creepy at the same time. Like, especially at the end, like there was something about the way he said, "Boy, do I love that." That I'm like, ugh. It's just like the final. I don't know what it was about his delivery, but it put me off on the song like from the beginning.
You could smell the Axe body spray coming off.
What was that?
You could smell the Axe body spray coming off. I mean, just typical male grossness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I even spaced on some of the words at that point just because it just I felt like I was being hit on and I didn't like it.
I kind of had the same thoughts here. I mean, to me, it felt like it was a Vegas lounge type of feel. He was trying to capture the feel of like a Burt Bacharach type of song, and just with his delivery, it was just gross. You felt like you were in not like one of the big prestigious Vegas showrooms. You were like one that was like 3 blocks away that used to be famous, that maybe Frank Sinatra stopped by to use the bathroom at one time. But just, I mean, you could smell like Lucky Strike cigarettes from 1970s in the air type of deal, and just ew, just this wasn't for me.
Yeah, it's like you're waiting to be pointed towards the direction of the casting couch.
Yeah. Hey, I got this movie I'm making. Hey, want to discuss it?
I've got this movie, and let me tell you in my most seductive voice why I think you're perfect for it.
All right. All right, next track. Let's go to the next one. Ideal Woman. What did you think?
I put that at least it made me move. But the sound felt very like I kept expecting him to start singing the Monster Mash. Like there was just something very awkward, and it went right back to the sarcastic delivery, just kind of starting to lose me again. And then at the end, I guess he was kind of being silly with the whole like, but I do like that, or I wouldn't change it, or I would change it. I forget, like, because I don't know. Maybe there's just something. There's that little bit of that feminist in me that just hears a man like saying what he likes ideally about a woman, and my ears just shut off. So if there was a deeper meaning to the song, I am willing to be educated.
Yeah. I didn't care for this. I said the music's awful. It sounds like someone imitating a song from a Quentin Tarantino movie without either having listened to any Quentin Tarantino soundtracks or watch a Quentin Tarantino movie. The guitar solo was decent, but just Shatner's delivery was just all over the place because he was vamping. He was vamping. He was trying to be funny here, and when he tries to be funny, it doesn't come across as funny. It just, to your point, it comes off as creepy. It just, ugh.
Yeah, and I think it's also because it followed Familiar Love, which was it seemed to give you the creepy vibe too. So it could have just been wrong place in the album for this song.
Yeah, possibly.
So maybe it just got set up for accidental failure. But yeah, I'm with you. This one, I would honestly be like, you know what? You can actually skip Ideal Woman. Like, listen to Familiar Love so you can feel just like your ears have been sexually assaulted. But like, you can skip Ideal Woman if you listen to that one. Or maybe it's an either or.
Or do it on shuffle. I don't know. But
do it on shuffle. Don't listen to them next to each other.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the title track. Has Been. What'd you think?
Oh, man. The only note I have is round up the wagons. Like, I felt like this almost could have gone with doing, I mean, not as good as, but it was very, since we had just done the Possum Posse.
Yeah.
It kind of, like, was a little close to that. But not as good. Sorry, William Shatner. I do love William Shatner, and I wanted to throw that out there. I feel like I got to give the Tim disclaimer. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not a beautiful rainbow flower to somebody else. But I love William Shatner, but man, this album just I had a little bit of a time getting through it.
Yeah, to your point, I did not care for the country opening. I can appreciate his take on the critics too, because it is silly for someone in my position to be telling him he's a has-been when he's still very much making lots of money in show business, and I'm just some schmuck with a podcast, you know.
Yeah.
And I get the point he was trying to make, but just oof. I wouldn't say it's the worst track on the album. We'll wait for the next track for that one. But you were going to say something.
Oh, no, it's almost like he was trying to be ironic with the choice of music for a song about has-beens, because there's so much of Western and even older like country and Western music that's still adapted and even used. But yeah, you get to this like, yeah, maybe Round Up the Wagons. That one is a has-been. Like if they, like, I don't think that style of country is going to come back. Or even, it's not even really referenced that much in current country. But some of the older, like, womp, 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 like, as the beginning, like, is still in modern country and existed, like, in the 70s and 80s, too. So I could see it being a little bit of this style being picked specifically. And if it was, it makes me respect it more. However, it doesn't make me like it anymore, like, find enjoyment in it more.
All right. Speaking of bad, let's talk about the next one. I can't get behind that.
I'm going to start with, I guess, a positive is that I liked the drum intro, but I think that ended shortly after that. But I did, like, it was a good frustration rage song, I guess. Like, he just sounded really fucking mad is what I guess I kind of got out of it. But I did enjoy the irony of the part where about getting paid for talking instead of singing, because that's what I pretty much at this point was like, oh, he did talk the entire album.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I had the same note about the drum opening. It was like, great Hawaii 5-0 drum opening there. But, you know, I never thought I would hear the day that Henry Rollins and William Shatner did a song together, and I regret the fact that they did a song together, because this was just awful. This is not something that I feel will grow on you. You will either find it absolutely hilarious or you will find it god awful. I'm in the latter.
Yeah, it's like people who really like bad movies. I think this is William Shatner's musical version, like an album version of a bad movie.
This is his Death Wish 3.
I can appreciate it, but I don't know if I like it. But did you have anything else to say about this song before we move to the final track?
No, I was just glad that particular song was over. But let's talk about the last one here. A duet with Brad Paisley, who actually wrote the song Real. What did you think?
Which, ironically, I felt like this was the only real song on the album, and it is because Brad Paisley wrote it. That explains it. And he also, like, did the singing in the album. Mm-hmm. So, you know, William Shatner did his thing, but then, like, you could very much... And Brad Paisley just sounds like Brad Paisley. So even if I didn't see the name Brad Paisley, I would have been like, is that Brad Paisley? Like, he's got kind of a distinct sound to him.
Right.
So it's almost... I felt like this was almost thrown on as a guest. Like, it was more a Brad Paisley song got thrown on to the end of a William Shatner album. But Shatner still Shatnered through it, though. Well, so there's that.
What I think may have happened, and this is just speculation, but I think back to a couple years back when the Monkees had a new album out. And they had, like... Rivers Cuomo from the band Weezer ended up writing the big track off the album, She Makes Me Laugh, but he wrote it for them specifically. So what I could see happening here is that Brad Paisley may have known William Shatner, because celebrities sometimes travel in circles. They may have met and through one way or another found out he was making the album, so thought, why not? Let's make this song here. I put that Paisley's contribution to the song was fine, but the song itself is just too preachy. I get it. Having folks continually want Shatner's thoughts on everything would be very frustrating if you're in his position. I am very much empathetic to that position, but this just is like a whining more than anything. You know, it's just, you know, it's like, this is the life you chose. I mean, did he anticipate in the 50s when he first started getting into acting that, you know, what the entertainment industry would become with streaming and all that stuff? No, he did not. But that still doesn't mean that he wasn't aware of the fact that, you know, people in high positions are sometimes asked their opinions and stuff that they're going to give the same answer as you or I would, you know, because at the end of the day, yes, he is a human. We get it. He's a real person just like everybody else, but just too preachy. I think it could have been worded a little differently, because I didn't think the song was that bad. I mean, the Brad Paisley part I thought was pretty good. So
yeah, that was kind of my point. Was I enjoyed Brad Paisley. Because he was on there and he was being Brad Paisley. But I guess, to be fair, you could say the same argument of William Shatner, to give credit where it is due. He came on here and he was William Shatner about it. Mm-hmm. And I will always appreciate that in an artist. So if this was his way of wanting to communicate in this way to those fans that would give a shit enough to hear him he kind of used the whole album to get a lot of thoughts out there. And in a way, I do think it's cool that he found a very Shatner way of putting out a bunch of thoughts that he had.
Yeah.
So overall, I could totally see the appreciation for it. I'm curious to see, because I guess he's got a bluegrass one that he announced.
A blues album.
A blues album. Thank you for correcting me on that one. Yeah. See, now we're even. We've both sufficiently corrected each other enough for this episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. I believe we've hit our quota. But yeah, like I saw that he's doing another one, and so there's part of me that wants to keep an ear, and maybe if he does something different, maybe talk about that one. But I think as far as this style of album goes, it's a solid Shatnered an album. Listen, enjoy. I would recommend honestly reading it, especially if you do have, cause part of the reason I can't pitch into the words is hearing issues. Mm-hmm. But I would highly recommend reading through some of it.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, I mean, I would tell folks, if you are a Shatner fan, give it a listen through at least once. I mean, it is a curiosity, and there are some great elements to it. I mean, whether it's the dark emotional element of that track where discussing his wife passing away, or some of the other tracks. It's not a bad album, but it's also not. It's not one you're going to ever listen to on repeat. Thank goodness for streaming services. I did not have to buy this.
Thank you, YouTube, and my ability to use it at work.
Yeah. All right. Next week will be my choice for an album, and I don't have one off the top of my head. So what I think I will do is create a poll on the Friends.
Goody!
Yeah. No, I'll do it on Twitter. I think Twitter, I'll get more mileage out of that and more people voting. But I will put 4 choices up. I will have the poll end on Tuesday. Is that a good enough time, do you think, to be able to listen and get your notes in for next recording?
Yeah, cut it off Tuesday night. If you let me know Wednesday morning, I can get it done.
All right, sounds good. So we're done. Another episode in the books.
Yeah, it was a good time. So are you ready to throw it to one Mr. Rogers?
That I am. Mr. Rogers, take it away. And remember,
it's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the day is new, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.